कौन है जी?
Today case is a patient with palpitation and dyspnea presented with aphasia. So today we will try to cover the two systems. One is neurological system, one is cardiovascular system. So we have the panelist Professor Jayanto Panda, who is the head of the Department of Medicine from SCB Medical College, Kotak. We have Professor Sandeep Ghosh, who is the cardiologist and from the Arjikon Medical College. Professor M. K. Rai will join later on. And to present, we have Dr. Shubhadeep Gupta, who is my ex-PGT, now doing the DM Neurology in Bangalore Institute of Neurology. He will demonstrate the different clinical tools. And a presenter is second year medicine postgraduate trainee, Dr. Kaushik Samanto. So I request Dr. Kaushik, please share your screen and start presentation. Dr.
Is my screen visible?
I think we have to unshare. We have to unshare for him to share the screen.
Sir, is my screen is visible?
Visible.
Visual.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, delegates. I am Kaushik Samantos, second year medicine PhD from Arjikon MCH. I am keen to present a case presentation on palpitation and exertional dyspnea with speech disturbances. Now, coming to patient particulars. My patient, 35 years old, male patient, occupation by farmer by occupation, and his fundamental education was class 12. His native language is Bengali, right-handed patient. Date of examination 15/7/21, and the informant was brother. Now, chief complaints. There is mainly 3 chief complaints by chronological order. First is gradually developing dyspnea on exertion for last 2 years, on and off palpitation for last 6 months, and last but not the least, sudden onset inability to speak for last 5 days. Now, history of present illness. Patient was on his usual activities 2 years back. Then he developed intermittent shortness of breath, which is progressive over the last 1 year. Initially, there was slight limitation of physical activity, like problem in unaccustomed exertion. Then gradually, after few months, he was unable to carry on ordinary activities, which even hampered his ability to earn a livelihood. But there is no change in occupation. He was still farmer. There is no history of orthopnea, paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, but the breathlessness was usually relieved on taking rest for few minutes. It was not associated with cough, hemoptysis, chest pain, swelling of legs, syncope, or nocturnal angina. Now coming to the second chief complaint. He also gave history of recurrent episodes of palpitation, which was irregular in nature, both during exertion and rest, associated with increasing breathlessness. When it occurred for the first time, he rushed to a local hospital and got some medication and relieved over few days. The episode or is similar episode, and the frequency was once or twice in a month, and for and each episode he had to take medication and consult local doctor. But it was not associated with gush of urine after cessation of palpitation. The last episode, as reported by his brother, was 6 days back. Then on the very next morning, he was not able to speak even a single word, but can produce some sound. He was immediately admitted to our hospital. According to his brother, during his hospital stay, he could speak at least few words without stuttering and constantly trying to speak with the staffs and relatives. But the normal cadence of speech was choppy or lacking. The few words uttered slowly and laboriously and enunciated poorly. Even he can make some gesture or sign languages and tried to write in paper, but not understandable by his brother. He was quite able to take food or water easily. It was not associated with any facial deviation or any focal or motor neurological deficit or nasal regurgitation or choking sensation. According to the informant, The patient was able to follow their edict but could not write properly. He had no weakness in any limb, or he can walk properly. He could move his body side by side or lift his head over pillow. He could feel his clothes or taking bath or feel mosquito bites. There is no history of double vision, blurring, dysphagia, drooping of shoulder, or any history of cranial nerve involvement. Patient had no history of psychiatric consultation or any relevant emotional event previously just before this episode. His bowel bladder was quite normal during the period of illness. Now coming to past history. No history, similar history in the past. No history of joint pain swelling in his childhood associated with fever. Personal history. The patient is a Bengali man, is right-handed, and there is no history of initially left-handed or any left-handed member in his family or trained into being right-handed. Additional history is not a cody smoker or not known alcoholic. Allergic history, family history, his father was known hypertensive, his mother was not known any case of any diseases, and no history of similar issue in his family member. Medical history, for last 6 months, according to his brother, patient was on some cardiac medication and specifically mentioning some blood thinners during the episode of local hospital. Patient is no known hypertensive or diabetic or any past significant medical history. Now coming to the DD. From history, there is two disorder, that is cardiac disorder and neurologic disorder.
Dr. Kaushik,
Yes, sir.
Dr. Jayanto, first you interact.
Yeah. Right, you have presented a very long history of exertional dyspnea. That is almost 2 years. So while somebody gives such a history, what are the differential diagnosis you'll think of?
Sir, exertional dyspnea. there is some-
Mainly on presenting complaint is exertional dyspnea, palpitation, and then aphasia. So first, the exertional dyspnea, which dates back to almost 2 years.
Yes, sir.
So such a long duration exertional dyspnea, what you think of?
Some cardiac disorder, there is some cardiac disorder, like some valvular
See,
heart.
cardiac disorder is not a medical term at all. You don't speak
sir.
like that. Neurological disorder, cardiac disorder, like the non-specialty people tell there is some heart disease. You see, what are the conditions? It's a cardiorespiratory disorder. Dyspnea is related to respiratory system or cardiovascular system?
Sir, both.
Both. So why you are ruling out respiratory causes?
Sir, there is no history of cough, and there is no history of seasonal variation or diurnal variation. There is no history of hemoptysis, and there is no history of pleuritic pain. And also patient is non-smoker. And also there is mainly the term exertional dyspnea, who is relieving taking rest, and there is associated with palpitation. So maybe this is origin from some heart diseases, like some valvular heart disease, whether mitral valve disease.
Okay. You are thinking of a cardiovascular origin
Yes, sir.
because of this reasons.
Why not simple anemia? Severe anemia can present with same way palpitation with exertional dyspnea.
Yes, sir,
after some exertion, there will be palpitation in anemia because the patient will be decompensated.
Yes, sir. But previously, there is some cause of anemia, like in a male patient, mainly there is some GI bleed or some bleed, but there is no history of some such cause of any, or patient, there is no nutritional cause. I have ruled out. But there is also no easy fatigue with actually previously.
Dr. Kaushik Dhar, you make Dr. Dijen Das panelist. Dr. Dijen Das is linked with us. Dr. Dijen Das.
Yeah. Dr. Dijen has asked you that why not it's a case of interstitial lung disease. So suppose you get a lung disease which is interstitial, the exertional dyspnea may be progressive over years.
Yes, sir.
So-
But vital capacity means in ILD, the presentation, previous presentation, initially at the initial period of patient is taking rest, after taking rest, patient has improved his work ability. So in ILD, this type of feature is not there. But after very
Okay. So what Professor Pal asked, the possibility of anemia you keep in your mind, and again in examination you will examine, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So tell me, in the cardiovascular armamentarium, which are the conditions where you get exertional dyspnea for a long time?
Mitral stenosis.
Mitral, you see,
No, no.
your mind is fixed with mitral stenosis.
Okay, sir. Some valvular disease or some valvular disease.
When you think of cardiovascular armamentarium in exertional dyspnea, first you'll think of valvular disease, or first you'll think of
Coronary
ischemic
artery
heart
disease.
disease?
Ischemic heart disease or coronary artery disease.
Yeah, first you tell me what is New York Heart Association classification, NYHA classification of symptoms of the coronary artery disease or ischemic heart disease.
Sir, classification, sir, it is their class of four class.
Yeah.
NYHA class is 1, 2, 3, and 4. One is there is some organic cause, but patient has no.
I'm not asking you about the cause. Tell me the symptoms.
Okay, sir. Symptom is in NIHA Gate 4 is there is.
I'm not asking you 4. You tell me 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. One is no or limitation of work in no limitation of work due to any ordinary activity. 1. And 2 is limitation of work, some ordinary activity or activity of unaccustomed exertion, which is not used to accustomed. Third is limitation of activity less than ordinary activities, like which is earn is livelihood. And fourth is limitation of what that is even in rest.
What is the symptom? The classification you are telling, the normal activities, then with ordinary activities, with less than severe activities, and even at rest. That is what are the symptoms that you see in the patient?
Okay, sir. In dyspnea, symptom is dyspnea, and in angina, symptom is chest pain. My NIHA class actually it is for many diseases like angina, dyspnea, heart failure. So symptom is according to the disease.
What are angina equivalents?
So there angina equivalents means there is no chest pain, but there is maybe diaphoresis, uneasiness, syncope.
Syncope, palpitation, fatigability, all
So
the
whatever you are telling, dyspnea, palpitation, both can be correlated to ischemic heart disease or coronary artery disease, and that can be precipitated by exertion in NYHA 2 or 3, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And patient can progress from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 in course of time.
Yes, sir.
What are your points against ischemic heart disease?
Sir, first is patient 33 years and there is no history of hypertension or diabetes. So this
there is a history of hypertension in father, you told, family history of hypertension.
Yes, a family history. There is family of hypertension, his father, but patient is not non-hypertensive or diabetic, and also there is no chest pain. He is typical. There is no chest pain.
So
yeah,
yes,
there is no chest pain. Fine.
There is the exertional dyspnea with palpitation. Another two issues you have mentioned. One is the situation of the volume overload. Any situation. Third is the any arrhythmia, particularly supraventricular arrhythmia present with palpitation. If the palpitation without syncope, with syncope, it is more like a ventricular event. If without syncope, it is more like a supraventricular event.
Yes, sir.
So now you proceed. So you have exertional dyspnea with palpitation.
Yes, sir.
Next. What is your clinical impression from your history?
Sorry, sir. What is my?
What is the clinical impression from your history?
Oh,
what is the structure involved?
See, he has not told about neurological deficits. So you are thinking of two things. One is cardiovascular, one is neurological.
Yes,
isn't it? So cardiovascular you have discussed. So what neurological issues you are thinking of?
As there is patient maybe this I can differ the DD will be First is aphasia, mutism, dysarthria, and uh, dysphonia.
A patient had some speech issues. Initially, patient was not being able to tell, and while in hospital, he is gradually,
Gradually recovery. Yes, sir.
yeah, he is telling with disarticulated speech.
Yes, sir.
So, what are the possibilities? What are the differential diagnosis?
Possibilities may be cerebrovascular accident, and due to cerebrovascular accident, there be maybe.
No, Kaushik, I am not asking about the etiology. First, you tell where you suspect the lesion. As per you go to the history, you go back to the history of speech. You go back. So where you suspect lesion to be.
Okay, sir. Here, sir, first is there is patient to not able to speak a single word but produce sound. So as he produce sound, there is no. So maybe this is not dysphonia or vocal cord problem. So vocal cord problem is excluded. Now, second, according to his brother, during his hospital day, he could speak at least few words. So this is in recovery phase or without slurring of speech.
Without
so maybe,
slurring.
Without slurring.
But
So this is there is no problem in 9 to 10 event any nerve because or any
no,
disarticular speech.
Kaushik, speech and language are three components. One is can be dysphonia, one can be dysarthria, one can be aphasia. So
Yes,
three
sir.
components. As per your history, you told the patient can utter few words. That means no dysphonia.
No,
You
sir.
told without few words, without slurring. That means he has no dysarthria.
Dysarthria.
But
Yes, sir.
just now you told patient has aphasia, dysarthria, dysphonia. That is why
Yes.
I told you come back to the history.
Okay, sir.
So you have the aphasia. Now, where is the lesion? We will come to the anatomy of the speech area later on. I told you to put a picture.
Yes, sir.
Now you say where is the lesion?
From the history, as there is but normal cadence of speech was choppy or lacking, but the few utter slowly or laboriously. So and also there is some auditory comprehension through history intact because he can able to understood his brother language. So the speech area which is or awareness area is intact here, and also patient there is no disorientation. So cortical area also intact, but and also there is no motor deficit. So subcortical area, all the subcortical structure may be intact. So probably this is a case of non-fluent or motor aphasia.
Now, what are
Yeah,
the now,
the
what
most
are the site
important
of
thing.
what are the sites of the motor area, and you tell me the anatomy of the motor speech area.
Okay,
What are the sites?
there is inferior frontal gyrus posterior part, there is Broca area, and just
What is
above
the
the Broca area,
What is this? Broca's?
this Broca area, and there is also transcortical area, the motor speech, and also above the Broca area there is exner area, and after the Broca area there is some connection to the basal ganglia and motor speech center. So the whole area which is connected interconnected certainly, and the total area should be intact to speech properly.
Just to add, Broca's area is basically motor association area. They plan. Second is the motor speech area, that is in the that is just in front of the area
Already
that
said.
regulate the lip and tongue, that area. Okay, and below this there is insula, that is the motor association area. So three components. Insula do the planning, and Broca's is the motor association area, and motor cortex is the precentral area just in front of the area center sulcus. Okay.
Yeah,
These are
all
components.
three are important for the speech.
Yes, sir.
all three.
And then most important thing is the orientation. Suppose
Yes.
the patient has a cognitive impairment, don't expect the patient to be able to speak, and there may be grunting sound only.
Yes, sir.
And
So-
external area is for the writing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you have told cardiovascular lesions and the neurological deficit probable.
Yes, sir.
Then
Okay, sir.
Dr. Shubhadeep,
Yes,
yes, you comment on the neurological aspects
from the history.
from the history.
sir. two history is very important in this patient. One is how the patient was reading. It is very important because one of the easiest way to differentiate between dyslexia and aphasia is to look at the reading and writing component of the speech. In case of aphasia, be it Wernicke's, be it Broca's, they are very often affected. But in case of dyslexia, these two components are well preserved. So the history of reading and writing should be elaborate in this patient. And one thing also is very important whenever we are mentioning any communicating disorder is also naming of object. If he can name any object, these 3 points, by these 3 pointers, we can actually differentiate aphasia syndrome from a dyslexia syndrome. So we should have 3 lines. One is naming of objects. One is how the patient is reading, particularly newspaper, and how is the patient writing. Because there was a indication in the history that patient can write, try to write in paper, but what he wrote, we don't know. If we can know that, then we can surely differentiate between dyslexia and aphasia, because in Broca's aphasia also, the patient cannot write. In case of dyslexia, the patient could be able to write, but yes, again due to the motor problem on the right side, it can be a problem. But this patient didn't have any hemiparesis, so the patient should have been able to write if the patient had dyslexia. We will elaborate the symptoms later on. Let him, sir, complete the examination. I will go in detail.
We'll go to the anatomy also. What are the reading area? What is the writing area?
Yes.
Why these are the involved? We'll come to the later on when we discuss the anatomy. Okay, now proceed.
Now, general examination, mainly positive finding is that the patient is conscious, oriented, and cooperative. Build average, nutrition average, faces no specific abnormality. And the other finding, pallor, icterus, cyanosis, clubbing, lymphatic edema, others, there is no abnormality detected. And faces nothing abnormal. And neck veins, there is not engorge, JVP not raised, and also AOF absent. Neck glands not palpable. BP as mentioned, 100/17 sitting left arm and 90/17 right arm. Pulse 110/110 per minute, irregular, variable in volume, but dominantly low. No radiofemoral delay. There is a difficult pulse deficit, that is 20. Peripheral pulses, all peripheral pulses are field recording, and there is also no carotid buoy bilaterally. Respiratory rate 18 per minute, SpO2 97 in room air, CBG 117. Handedness, patient is right-handedness. As I discussed earlier, there is no left-handed is in this figure, or also he is right-handed from the childhood. And oral cavity hygiene maintained, no abnormality in facial structure, tongue, gum, uvula in the midline. Now, CNS examination. Higher function, normal. Cranial nerves, there is all cranial examined. And
anything contributory from the general examination? After general examination, did you get anything which is contributing to your impression from the history?
Yes, sir. There is mainly 3 points. First is JVP, that is AOF absent. Second is pulse. There is pulse is irregular. There is few condition which is pulse is irregular. One condition, atrial fibrillation, all multifocal atrial tachycardia or conduction, variable conduction block. And there is also as AOF absent. Maybe this is due to atrial fibrillation. And also there is pulse deficit. Heart rate is 130 and his pulse is 110. So maybe there is this maybe due to atrial fibrillation. So these 3 points I can get from my general examination.
So how this atrial fibrillation you think will be responsible for causing the exertional dyspnea and palpitation?
Sir, atrial fibrillation, any dysrhythmia or arrhythmia can cause palpitation. And also if there is ongoing some cardiac diseases, and upon atrial fibrillation, there will be short PR interval or tachycardia, specifically tachycardia. So there is diastolic filling time is less. So maybe due to this diastolic filling time, there may be palpitation or atrial fibrillation itself called palpitation. And also,
what you think at this juncture that the cause of atrial fibrillation? It can be a idiopathic, or it can be because of hyperthyroid, or it can be because of any
Drugs.
conduction abnormality. What may be the cause?
Sir, maybe I am excluding one by one. There is no history of drugs, and there is history of thyroid disorder. In thyroid toxicity, the other feature like patient some diarrhea, body weight loss, and also there is no history of stress and some other causes like
Stress will cause atrial fibrillation.
yes sir.
You are telling stress, diarrhea, these are the causes of atrial fibrillation.
No sir, thyroid toxicosis feature. Some when there is thyroid toxicity,
Yeah,
maybe
so
diarrhea or weight loss.
you're ruling out thyrotoxicosis.
Yes sir.
Okay, BMI is?
Its BMI is sir 22. Sir, not
What do you expect in thyrotoxicosis?
thyrotoxicity BMI will be high.
Yeah, you expect tremor, you expect
Tremor,
emaciation,
emaciation.
you
There is
expect
no weight loss or
yeah,
any catches.
proptosis. That's all not there in general.
Yes sir.
Have you mentioned about the thyroid gland examination?
Sir,
I
neck
don't
gland,
think.
any not it's a neglect I believe, but there is no abnormality in thyroid gland, sir. Neck
Have
gland.
you examined the hand of the patient?
Yes sir, there is no tremor, but
Other than
no
tremor,
clubbing, no tremor, no
other than clubbing and tremor, what can you see in the hand in thyrotoxicosis?
thyroid acropathy, sir.
Okay, that is short. Any other thing that you can see in hand examination?
Tremor and acropathy, except tremor and acropathy. In thyroid examination.
If we just feel the hand, if you shake with the patient's hand, what do you feel in
Oh,
patient's
warm,
hand?
sweating.
So you can get warm and sweated palm.
Yes sir.
So
A moist feeling will be there.
Yes sir.
So are you getting that?
No sir, patient hand is quite dry.
Have
Cold.
you examined for that?
Yes sir, because during examine pulse or handshake position, the hand was dry.
yes, two situations. One is cold and sweating, anxiety, cold and hot, thyrotoxicosis. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Sir, tone, sir, there as patient examined normal tone in both upper and lower lip. There is no motor weakness. So power, all upper and lower lip power is 5/5 every group of muscle. Reflexes also normal, not exaggerated. On jaw jerk also absent.
Higher
Sensory,
functions normal, Kaushik.
yes sir.
Speech comes under higher function or not?
Sir,
Speech is a higher function or not?
speech is a hard question. Yes sir.
So how higher functions can be normal?
Sorry sir. I missed.
The basic mistake.
Yes sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. In sensory examination, all motors of sensation of posterior and some anterior column.
So in which part you are describing the speech of the patient?
Sir,
In
please,
the examination,
yes, sir.
only history you are describing, or here in a examination you have put speech?
Sir, I have a prescription, but as it is case of speech disorder, so I have discussed this later.
But in examination, you will not examine speech.
No,
Like you examine the handedness, you examine the sensorium, the cranial nerves. So higher functions, you will not describe the speech.
Yes, sir. Higher function speech is a part of higher function, but as this is a case of, sir, I emphasize this later, sir. No.
Okay, go ahead.
There is no positive finding in sensory, sir. Now, sir, this is now higher function tested properly, sir. This is the higher function. Patient is alert, conscious, cooperative, and oriented to time, place, and person. Memory can't be tested or could not appreciated, as patient can't able to talk properly, and attention also could not be elicited. Now the speech, which is comes to the higher function, is discussed here. The speech, first point is conversational speech, non-fluent, that is, or but meaningful. Patient can able to I can able to make out his speech, that is, and in longest sentence that is less than 7 words. And second is comprehension. Patient can make out my auditory comments, like auditory comprehension is intact, After asking some few questions like, is it draining, or he can nod his head, and he can place like he can place objects by following commands. Like if I gave him pen and talk to keep it, and he keep it aside. And repetition, some few words repetition also we can't able to repeat my words. Reading, I used to give him newspaper, but the patient has difficulty in completing words. And writing also, patient can't write properly, but there is symptoms of grammatical mistake. And naming, I use some familiar objects like pen, water bottle, but patient can make it out that what is it or what is used to do, but the proper name he could not utter. So this is named is faulty.
Yes.
So
good.
when patient unable to name, and there are problem like difficulty in writing and repetition is affected, so there is cognitive dysfunction. So it's not only speech, there is some cognitive impairment. Have you done a mini mental state test?
Sir, but patient, yes, but minimum tested. So, sir, here can't be tested because if I say orientation memory, if I some able to work some five words, 6 words, patient can't able to repeat or patient can't able to subtract because here is patient can utter few words. So, sir, I think MMSC score, MSc can't be done here.
Yeah, will be biased because of cognitive impairment. It will
Yes,
be
sir,
biased.
because
So there is cognitive impairment. What you have mentioned,
okay,
beyond speech, there is cognitive impairment.
okay, so there is
Yes. Just to interrupt for the students, this is the speech examination is very important because there is a 6 component. Every student, when you are asked to examine the language function, you have to have a 6 component that he has mentioned. One is spontaneous speech, whether fluent or non-fluent. Second is comprehension. Third is naming. Fourth is repetition. Fifth is writing. Sixth is reading. Every component he has covered. So this 6 component you just to remember when you are asked to do a language function examination. Yes, proceed. We will come in details later on.
Okay, sir. Sir, I have used the Alexander Benson formulation. That is
We'll come
bedside
later on.
language.
We will come it later on.
Okay, sir. Sir, now the CNS part, aphasia, I have mentioned, and examination is over in CNS point of view. I said that's it. Now, sir, coming to CVS examination. This inspection.
What
there is
what
no
were
chest
the?
or-
I'm interrupting. What was the plantar response?
Sir, plantar response bilateral reflex, sir. There is reflex,
Flex.
reflex, superficial reflex was a normal. I have mentioned.
You are
All
not
reflex-
you are not getting any upper motor neuron sign.
No, sir, there is no upper motor neuron sign because sir, power reflexes all are normal. No upper motor neuron sign was there.
Suppose in a patient of cardiovascular abnormality, you get a acute neurological deficit, mostly because of a cardioembolization which produces that.
Yes, sir.
So to correlate that, what you have searched for?
Sir,
So-
some as some empty stroke, there would be some upper motor neuron like or orientation, or there is typical history of syncope, or there is TIF like feature, or there is neurological deficit, or there is maybe some convulsion. But here, his brother did not give any history of.
Okay, proceed to cardiovascular.
Okay, sir. Thank
You
you.
will, in cardiovascular, you don't mention about the pulse, blood pressure, JVP again after mentioning at the general examination.
Sir, pulsar
You
examination.
see, pulse is very important in this patient because you are getting irregular pulse.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And
Sir,
there
I
is a
have,
pulse deficit also.
yes, sir. Pulse deficit I have sir mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So
And also,
in the CVS, I think from the general examination, you reiterate few findings, mainly pulse, blood pressure, and JVP.
yes, sir. So JVP,
Okay.
there is no A wave. I have mentioned earlier.
That if you repeat here, that will be worthwhile to correlate with the cardiovascular findings.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Palpation. Sir, apex beat, tapping in nature, base palpated in left lateral position, 2.5 medial to the mid clavicle line. There is no thrill or hip, and sir, no epigastric pulsation. Now, percussion not done here. Auscultation. So his heart rate is 130 per minute, which was irregular. So this pulse deficit, as I mentioned earlier, is at 20. Heart sound, S1 is audible, but variable intensity, but dominantly loud. P2 loud, narrow physiological split. And coming to the adventure sound, S3 and S4 absent, opening snap present. Heart just after S2, best audible between the just medial to the apical area, and short A2S interval. There is no ejection click or pericardial duct. Now coming to the murmur, there is low pitch mid diastolic murmur. Pre-systolic accentuation could not be appreciated without any radiation. Best heart are apical area in left heart position in expression.
You're not getting mid-diastolic murmur?
Yes, sir. Low pitch mid diastolic murmur.
Low pitch mid with pre-systolic accentuation.
No, sir. Without pre-systolic, I can't appreciate that.
Okay. So you're getting a mid-diastolic murmur, low pitched without pre-systolic accentuation
Yes, sir.
and without any radiation.
Yes, sir.
What was the position of the apex, you said?
Sir, 2.5 centimeter medial to the mid clavicular line.
Now go back by one slide.
Okay, sir.
2.5 medial to the mid-clavicular line. In which space?
Oh, sir, fifth.
Is it important that you mention the space, or space can be anywhere?
No, sir. It's very important.
So how can you know it's down or out, or it's normal?
Yes, sir.
What is the best position to palpate the apex?
Sir, actually, any rotation can displace apex. So best position is supine.
Best position is the standing position. Okay, standing, because in standing position apex almost same correlate. If you take the X-ray, the apex and standing position it corroborate. So this is the best position. Otherwise you can see in the supine, but not position always standing or supine, and character by the left lateral position. And if there is huge cardiomegaly, also in a sitting position you have to come back from the back side, because apex can be hugely displaced even to the back. So in sitting position, if you do not get apex properly in the supine position, you try the patient in a sitting position from the back, because of the presence of huge cardiomegaly.
Okay, sir.
So you have not found any apical thrill,
No, sir. No apical thrill or any thrill.
and there is no palpable second heart sound also.
No.
And you are thinking that there is no cardiomegaly.
No, sir. There is no fiber, as the apex is inward side and also fifth position place. So there is no cardiomegaly, whether right ventricular or left ventricular type. No cardiomegaly.
Okay. So you should write the fifth
Okay, sir.
intercostal
Yes, sir.
space.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Go ahead.
Sir, all the and sir, here.
Why didn't you percuss the second space? Should you
Second
percuss
space.
the second space? What do you get by percussion? What are the impression that you derive from the percussion?
Sir, first is if there is some pericardial effusion, there will be dull percussion, or if percussion there is emphysema, there is percussion which can, and also
So at least second space you could have percussed.
yes, sir.
What forbidden you to percuss the second space?
So, Kaushik, what about the severity of mitral stenosis in this case?
Sir, severity of mitral stenosis in this, as
How
I
we can assess?
A2S interval is the there is short A2S interval, and they also the intensity of the
More
beat does-
severe, less gap. More severe, less gap.
Yes, sir. More severe, less gap, and
Number
also
two,
the intensity of the murmur also.
The longer the murmur,
The severe more, and in long-standing cases, if there is sign of pulmonary hypertension, then maybe this is the sign of severity.
in the mild murmur, there may be only mid-diastolic.
Yes, sir.
And
But
and after the mid-diastolic, there can be some descending. Then again, pre-systolic
this is
accentuation.
accentuation,
More severe, this descending limb will be abolished.
and
It will,
more severe, then there is no
Ah.
murmur. I had no murmur.
now, first only mid-diastolic,
Okay.
then presystolic accentuation with a dipping in between the mid diastolic and late systolic. Gradually, the dipping will be lost, and mid diastolic murmur directly will merge with presystolic accentuation. More severe murmur will be abolished. Okay. So, what are the situation where we will get the silent MS?
So first is pure very severe murmur. There is less than 1 centimeter area, 1 centimeter square area of murmur. And second is purely calcified mitral valve. And third is atrial fibrillation or any atrial fibrillation.
Fourth, huge pulmonary hypertension, right ventricular hypertrophy, so that the left ventricle is pushed backward. This is the fourth situation where we will get the silent. Dr. Sandeep Ghosh, he is the cardiologist from my college. Dr. Sandeep, you are connected. Please interact on the clinical findings.
Yes, sir.
Please interact. You discuss important questions that are often asked in the exam on this examination findings.
Yeah, that is very important. And Kaushik, you are telling opening snap is present. What does it indicate? It's a mild, moderate, or severe MS.
Sir, moderate MS, because severe opening snap absent, and also it's an organic cause from mitral valve itself.
Yeah. So because you are getting an opening snap, and though the A to OS interval is short, you think of a moderate MS, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Sandeep, your opinion
Yes,
regarding
yes.
the cardiovascular.
Sir, actually, OS will be present even in the severe cases also.
Yeah.
But the O2-OS interval will be short and the MDM will be very long. OS actually signifies that the valve is pliable. The
Yeah.
valve is pliable.
Valve is pliable.
Yes.
So it indicates valve is pliable, isn't it? Kaushik?
What is the
Yes,
best
sir.
side to see the OS and
Sir,
best
base
side
site
to
is
see the
just
S3?
between the arbs area and apical area, or just medial to the apical area, one space.
It is in between the mitral area and tricuspid,
And-
in between.
But
You can see the
yes.
open. And what is the best side to see the S3? And what we will see by the which will best heart by the diaphragm, which best heart by the bell.
Sir, Bill, sir, in apical area mitral, this murmur, also mid diastolic murmur can be heard by Bill, and S3 can diaphragm.
No.
S3 and
Low-pitch
S4
sounds
also
are
low
being
pitch sound.
heard
Yes, sir.
Any low pitch sound by
with the
Bill.
well of the stethoscope.
All
S3
high
and
pitch
S-
sound by the diaphragm.
Sound by the diaphragm.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
So you are
And what
telling
is
low pitch MDM. So
Yes, sir, low pitch.
and
MDM.
you have auscultated by the bell of the stethoscope in left lateral position.
Yes, sir, in expression.
Okay. What are the DD of mitral stenosis? And what are the DD of mid diastolic murmur? Two questions.
Sir, court triatrium, left axial myxoma, calcific mitral, and also
Ball valve thrombus, left
Ball
axial
valve
myxoma. Then
and mitral stenosis or some other murmur-like condition in this
tricuspid stenosis. Tricuspid stenosis.
Tricuspid
If
stenosis.
right heart come in front. So tricuspid stenosis, mitral stenosis, ball valve thrombus, left axial
left
myxoma.
myxoma or court triatrium.
What are the DD of mid diastolic rambling
And
murmur?
Caricum murmur is also
Oh,
there.
caricum,
Caricum murmur and
caricum,
Austin Flint murmur.
Austin Flint murmur.
Austin
Austin
murmur.
Flint.
Also diastolic murmur of ASD, VSD.
ASD.
Okay,
Yes, sir. They are functional murmurs.
functional murmur. So, so how will differentiate between these two?
So
This
first
cycle-
is opening snap. Opening snap here, maybe this is due to valve pliable. So this is originated from the valve itself. And in also if there will be in case of the other, there will be no opening snap. And also in Austin Flint murmur,
tricuspid stenosis can also have opening snap.
opening snap.
How
The
first
area
how
is-
will differentiate between tricuspid stenosis and mitral stenosis?
Sir, the area is different. Mitral stenosis in apical area, and also tricuspid stenosis not in apical area, which is fourth intercostal space. And
Secondly, inspiration. TS
in expression, and also this is in expression and
tricuspid
the very
stenosis.
dynamic auscultation
On inspiration, TS murmur will increase.
increase
And MS
expression
murmur
is
is an expiration. Third, presystolic accentuation present with MS, no presystolic accentuation with the TS.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now differentiate between the Austin field murmur and with MS and Caricum murmur with MS.
In Austin field murmur also there is no opening snap, and in Austin field murmur there will be associated other murmur of the aortic area itself, and because Austin field murmur and there will be some radiation to the there's a radiation, but in mitral area, mitral stenosis there is no radiation, and also in Austin field murmur. Austin field murmur, there is no
Austin field murmur doesn't have the pre-systolic accentuation.
No
association.
pre-systolic. And how
And
dynamic
it is-
auscultation will
Yeah.
differentiate.
Yes, sir. Actually, if I stand, then A2 OS interval actually decrease in standing. Because A2 OS interval decrease in standing. Sorry, sir. No, sir.
No,
actually,
no, opposite. Opposite.
Opposite. A2 OS interval increase
Opposite.
in
Yes.
standing position, but there will be no such changes.
Now, in what happened if you do if we apply the amyl nitrate, Austin field
Yeah.
murmur will decrease or increase. What happened to the MS murmur? If you
Sir,
apply the amyl nitrate, what will happen?
Venous return.
Outflow will increase, so Austin field murmur will
MS?
decrease.
But
Yes.
MS will increase murmur.
In
Yes.
MS, it will increase both in intensity and duration.
And if you apply the hand grip, what will be the Austin field murmur? You just think the physics.
Venous return, sir.
Registration বেশি হবে তাহলে কি হবে?
Austin field murmur will increase.
Yes.
Austin field murmur due to the backflow of the aortic jet. Okay.
Yeah. With
It's
hand
strike-
grip, it will increase. Yeah.
It strike the LV cavity and then it push the mitral
Anterior
valve.
calf mitral
Toward.
valve.
So if there is more regurgitation, more pushing of the mitral valve toward the atrium. So in a hand grip, Austin field murmur will increase, but MS murmur will decrease. Okay. How will differentiate between the Caricum murmur and MS murmur?
In also as Caricum murmur is functional murmur in infected endocarditis, so there is an organic
Rheumatic fever.
Rheumatic fever.
rheumatic
It is not-
rheumatic
No, this is not functional murmur. What is the difference between the organic murmur, functional murmur, and hemic murmur? There is some misconception. There is a valvulitis. In Caricum murmur, there is a valvulitis. Okay. Valve
So when
edema.
valvulitis resolved, the murmur is gone.
No, it is often associated with, see, organic murmur means there is some pathology. Functional murmur means there is a pathology in one place, your murmur may be in another place. Okay. And physiological murmur means there is no pathology in the heart. So ASD in the septum, but you are getting the diastolic flow, increased flow in the mitral area. This is functional murmur. Pathology one place, murmur in one place. So there is a valvulitis, so edema, so there is a relative obstruction. So you are getting some diastolic murmur. Here we will get the S3. S3 will, there is a rheumatic fever, rheumatic carditis, so it will be preceded by S3. But MS will never preceded by S3. It is preceded by the OS. There is a
Yes.
difference.
Yes. So, Kaushik, you have written the narrow physiological split.
Yes.
So, how you appreciate a normal split?
What is split? How will appreciate?
So split actually is the second also split A2P2 gap.
So
This
first
for
you get,
split.
yeah, first you get a
When it is base heard.
Is better in pulmonary area.
In inspiration or expiration?
In
Splitting?
in actually in A2 is occur earlier. So in inspiration, heart.
No, you just describe a normal split.
You
What
describe
you-
the
what- yeah.
physiology of normal split. What is split?
What you get and where you get.
Whether you
sir.
are getting M1 and T1 separately
No,
or
sir.
A2P2. Why not?
Because of the there is in split there is a hangout interval in aortic or pulmonary area, but in a T1 tricuspid or M1 there is no hangout interval.
No. Issue is if that, see, A2P2 and M1 T1 never occurred simultaneously.
Yes.
Left-sided event earlier because of the conduction, right side later on. Okay, that is why
Yes, sir.
first M1, then T1, first A2, then P2. Okay, but what happens if there is
Compliance with
Hmm?
aortic in aorta, there is
Now,
no
if the gap between two sound is less than 30 millisecond, our ear cannot differentiate whether M1 and T1 gap is around 20 millisecond. So split between M1 T1 is almost impossible to understand. Okay, but whereas A2 P2 gap is between the 30 to 35 millisecond. So it is possible to appreciate between the gap between A2 and P2. There is a physiological split, or you can do some maneuver. Suppose you are taking the deep inspiration, so P2 will be delayed. So A2 P2 gap will be more than even more than 35 millisecond. So it will be more prominent. So that is why whatever we say, that is the split of the second heart sound, not of the split of the first heart sound. Understand? Now you give the answer of the Dr. Panda.
Yeah, now tell. Now the basic physiology is told to you. So now you can tell a normal split.
so normal split is that is A2 is occur earlier than P2
Yeah.
and
Okay.
it is earlier P2 and
Which phase of respiration?
inspiration.
Inspiration. Which area?
Uh, uh, so
You see in
aortic,
aortic area or pulmonary area?
aortic area.
No,
Confused.
Pulmonary.
And Kaushik, I am giving the hints because this split depends on the three situations. One is the electrical activation, one is the ejection time, third is the force or volume of the ventricle. Okay, so I am telling you the A2
And
first,
hangout
P2
interface.
later. Yes, A2 first, P2 later on. So I am telling you the situation. You tell me what will happen. If there is a left ventricular failure, what will happen?
If there is left ventricular failure, then sir, A2 occur earlier.
Hey, left ventricular failure. It
Only
will take longer
time.
time. Huh.
Yes, more time
So-
then A2 P2 gap will decrease.
Decrease, then it will be reverse.
Reverse after
Or further, it is reverse. If there is right ventricular failure, what will happen?
right ventricular failure, then P2 P2
Will be
more
delayed.
delayed.
So
gap
exaggerated physiological split. Okay.
gap will increase.
So LVF reverse split, RV failure, exaggerated physiological split.
Exactly split.
Now you think there is aortic stenosis. What will happen?
There is I would say A2 occur earlier. A2. So
It
any
is
aortic
taking more
stenosis, there
time.
is
More
no.
time it will take to eject.
eject.
So
sir,
A2 first will merge, then will be reverse. Okay,
Yes,
reverse
sir.
splitting. If there is pulmonary stenosis, what will happen? will
the
take more
gap
time.
increase. Gap increase.
So there will be physiological splitting. If there is left bundle branch LBB, what will happen?
Then also can't push more but so A2 will be earlier.
LBB taking more time.
Or will be more time. So it's a A2 will
So-
be reverse splitting. Maybe
Reverse splitting. If the right bundle branch block,
there will be split with increase.
exaggerated physiological
Exaggerated
splitting,
physiological response.
because P2 will be more delayed. This is very simple for the split to remember. Okay. If, Sandeep, to add something.
Another thing is during looking for the split of the second heart sound, you should always examine the pulmonary area because the pulmonary component is the soft sound, very soft sound. If you normally in aortic area, sometimes pulmonary sound may not be audible. If it is loud,
Don't confuse.
Okay. Now, later on we will come to the therapy, the management of the mitral stenosis, and if some embolization happened due to the mitral stenosis with atrial fibrillation, how we will manage such a case. At the last part, Dr. Sandeep Ghosh will tell you what to do in such a case. Now we
Has
go to the
he finished? Has he finished the presentation?
No, sir,
Anything
there is
more?
summary and
summary.
only-
You please tell
Yeah,
summary.
summarize.
okay, sir. A 35-year-old non-hypertensive, non-diabetic, non-smoker, non-alcoholic male present with casually progressing exertional dyspnea for last casually 1 year with recurrent episode of irregular palpitation occurring even at rest. Presented with non-fluent aphasia for last 5 days with auditory comprehension more or less intact. with no other motor deficit or slurring of speech. This is from history. And from examination point of view of general survey, on examination, variable volume, irregular pulse with pulse deficit 20, absence of a wave in JVP with no alteration of orientation. This from general survey. And from cardiac examination, CVS examination, cardiac examination showing variably loud S1, loud P2 with narrow physiological split with mid-diastolic rumbling murmur in the mitral area. Now, from CNS examination, on examination, an alert conscious patient had non-fluent aphasia with preserved comprehension and poor repetition, defective naming ability with distinct breakdown of correct syntax, not associated with any facial or any motor weakness or hemisensory loss. So this is from examination.
Actually, you need some modifications. In neurological examination, how can you write an alert conscious patients? Patient is fully alert.
Sir,
You told that there is some difficulty in reading, writing, and sensorium. You think of well-oriented to place, person, and time.
sir,
Patient is fully conscious, well-oriented to place, person, and time, or patient has some confusion. Some disorientation is there.
Disorientation.
Already you have mentioned.
Sir,
So
actually,
how
this
can-
is qualitative. Sir, there's quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative GCS is normal, but there is qualitative error of orientation.
Qualitative or quantitative, patient is not completely conscious, well-oriented to place, person, and time. There is a confusion,
Okay, sir.
and you cannot tell alert conscious. Non-affluent aphasia is fine. Go back to the previous slide.
Okay,
There is
sir.
some basic problem in description. Non-hypertensive, non-diabetic, non-alcoholic is fine. Gradually progressive, instead you can use the word gradually worsening.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Worsening.
Yeah, exertional dyspnea worsens gradually.
Worsening,
So
yes, sir.
instead of progressive, you can mention gradually worsening. And the recurrent episode of irregular palpitation doesn't have any meaning. Recurrent episode of palpitation. What irregular palpitation? You don't expect the palpitation to be in regular interval.
Okay, okay.
And even at the rest that you have already mentioned. Similarly, absence of a presystolic accentuation that has already been pointed out by our panelist, Dr. Arnab Bhattacharya, that there, without any presystolic accentuation, you can write, but presystolic accentuation was absent. I mean, not write that. So whatever is there, you can mention. Fine.
Fine.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Sir,
Okay. Dr. Kaushik.
Yeah.
Hello,
Yes,
Dr. Kaushik.
yes.
Dr. Dijendas, please ask.
Yeah. So, what do you mean by irregular pulse?
Irregular pulse means there is two varieties: regularly irregular and irregularly
No,
irregular.
no, no.
Means,
What do you mean by irregular pulse? Simple.
okay,
It is irregular in rate, irregular in volume.
rhythm.
And rhythm.
I mean the rhythm and volume.
Yes,
So
sir.
is there anything to write again that there is different in volume in irregular pulse? You see the previous slide.
It's a variable pulse. Variable
Yeah,
pulse.
you have said about the variable
Variable
volume
volume.
and irregular pulse.
Yes.
Irregular. So irregular means I think irregular in volume as
And
well as
irregular-
rhythm.
Okay, sir.
How could you calculate the pulse deficit of 20?
Sir, his heart rate was measured. That was 130, and his pulse was 110. So pulse
Calculated. How could you calculate? You had taken somebody else to yourself calculated. You
Yes, sir.
calculated simultaneously in the same minute, or one followed by another?
Sir, one followed by another actually.
Does it calculated like that?
No, sir. Actually, I have to calculate. I have to calculate.
Even your heart rate will vary from minute to minute.
Yes, sir. Heart rate vary.
So if your pulse rate varies from minute to minute, should you calculate the pulse and the heart rate simultaneously or one after the another?
So simultaneously, and also
How do you
So-
calculate? How do you calculate simultaneously?
okay, sir. So maybe two examiner was can calculate, but
No, singly, how will you examine?
was,
Yes, Dr. Dijen, you describe.
No, it is said best option is because if you want to calculate both heart rate and pulse rate together by single way, it's little difficult. So what we can do is the sounds which are audible but pulse is not palpable. You can count the miss beat, right? You count the heart rate which are not palpable in the pulse.
Yeah, right. You put the stetho in the precordium on the apex and palpate the pulse simultaneously. Take up the beats which are missing. There is heart rate, there is no pulse, the pulsus paradoxus. So absence of the pulse in presence of a heart rate. Just calculate those bits that you can do individually.
So proceed,
yes, sir.
summary
And-
and examination.
So examination done. Now, sir, provisional diagnosis. Uh, so this is a case of mitral stenosis, probably due to rheumatic origin, with pulmonary arterial hypertension on atrial fibrillation with rapid ventricular rate, not in failure, with Broca's aphasia, probably due to embolic stroke in recovery phase. This is this provisional diagnosis.
So now we'll come to the discussion of the two part. One is language and speech. Another is the management of the mitral stenosis. First, Dr. Shubhadeep. Hello, Dr.
Yes, sir.
Shubhadeep. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Kaushik, you show the anatomy of the language areas. Yes. So Shubhadeep, you describe now this picture. You describe, suppose first, what is the language function and what are the areas responsible for different activity or understanding and producing the speech from the of the brain.
Yes, sir. Sir, please keep this slide on. I am going on
Oh.
describing. Okay.
Okay, okay.
So to understand the communication disorders, as sir very well mentioned, the first step is spontaneous speech. I will just have a look at the picture when I will localizing each and everything. So the spontaneous speech has the following components. The first component is the phonology. What is phonology? It is appropriately sequenced speech sounds. And this is the smallest unit of any verbally produced sound. The localization of this area is left superior temporal lobe. Now we go on to the semantics. What is semantics? It is assignment.
Refer words of meaning.
Yes, assignment of meaning to the words. And the anatomical localization is anterior and inferior temporal lobe. That is the area around Wernicke's area. Now the next part is syntax. What is syntax? Syntax is
Grammatical
grammar.
construction of sentences.
Syntax is grammar. So there is the localization is Broca's area and left insula. The fourth component is prosody. What is prosody? It is the music of the spoken language. Each spoken language has to be fine-tuned. Stress, cadence, intonation, these are contributions of the left hemisphere. And the emotional component is given by the right hemisphere. Now the fifth component is pragmatism. What is pragmatism? It is appropriateness. The way a student should talk with his teacher. This is the appropriateness. This comes from right hemisphere. The sixth component is humor and jocularity. This is again comes from right hemisphere. And the seventh point is discourse. That is the flow of a dialogue. What is happening between you and your teachers. So the localization again is right hemisphere. Now I will test and interpret and I will
No,
help.
just Shubhadeep, just I am adding something. There is a three component. First is the reception of the impulse. That is reception by two way, either see by auditory cortex or by visual cortex. So
Yes,
this
sir, I
is
will come here.
okay,
Sir, I will
okay,
come.
okay.
So at this point, we are reading to when we are trying to detect the spontaneous speech. So in case of spontaneous speech, the first thing you mentioned about fluency. What is fluency? Fluency is the number of words said per minute. So when we can talk something as non-fluent, when the word count is less than 50, there will be single words or very short phrases, and there will be frequent pause. The second part, which we test in spontaneous speech, is the prosody, which I have told, the music of the language. Next, the syntax, the phrase length, and here we come in a very critical juncture to identify the other important structures of our brain, which Sir is mentioning, is the our comprehension area, that is the Wernicke's area. How we comprehend the sound or we transfer a sound, it can be from reading and it can be from listening also. So how the listening happens, you know the auditory pathway very well. The fourth order neuron reaches the auditory cortex, and there is area in the left superior temporal gyrus known as auditory phoneme perception area. Okay, so that
welcome, Dr. M. K. Rai.
is responsible for auditory phoneme perception, and remember, listen to this area will cause pure word deafness. That is the word he will listen, but the perception will not be there. And if this area is affected bilaterally, there will be cortical deafness. The second part of Wernicke's area is internal semantic system, which is the ventral temporal lobe and the middle temporal gyrus, where the store of the words are there, from where we will mix and match, and finally the words will be retrieved by the lexical retrieval system, which is in the left supramarginal gyrus and left superficial gyrus, where in the reading the pathway is completely different. In the reading, the pathway, I'm not going into very detail, but in reading it starts from occipital lobe, then it goes to the visual word form area or the fusiform gyrus, and from the fusiform gyrus it goes to the angular gyrus. And if we have to read aloud, then this must be passed on to the Broca's area. So this is the part. So the next, what I said is paraphasia. So paraphasia can be phonemic, can be semantic. So both phonemic and semantic errors are due to this involvement of the posterior speech area. The sixth component which we should test is the initiation difficulty. It can be due to apathy, or it can be due to a motor problem of the speech. In case of apathy, the listen should be in the medial prefrontal cortex and its connection. And in case of motor, there will be listen in the Broca's area. Now the next point is word finding ability. Again, the word finding happens in the posterior speech area, in the semantic area, and in the lexical retrieval system. And finally, the content. The content is overall given by the postural language area, but the grammar and syntax, it is given by the anterior speech area. Now, when you are talking with a patient, always look at the voice. The first important point is the voice. In voice, the components are volume, pitch, and timbre. Now, what is dysphonia? Dysphonia is abnormality of this voice.
Subhadeep, first
Yes.
we finish the language, then we will come to the research and dysphonia. Dr. Professor Rai, your comment on the on this area.
These three area, I think he has covered them nicely, but sometimes in the examination, the students may not remember all these areas what he has mentioned. To make this is very simplified, I think there are 6 points one should remember. 6 points means when there is a problem lies with your language, that is your aphasia or dysphasia. Dysphasia and aphasia sometimes are simultaneously used. So if there is a problem with the language, language means is a way of communication. Language may not be verbal. It may be just a gesture, it may be posture, anything. So that can be language. Even a blind can also have a language with some other ways. So you cannot only depend on the paraphasias, the semantics and other things. So just by shrugging a shoulder, you can explain something. So that is also a part of your language disorder. So mind you, communication has got two parts. One is your language problem and one is your speech problem. Both sometimes can occur simultaneously in the same patient. So to be very specific and to make it very simple, there are basically 6 types, but we will not go into that. What we will say, if there is a problem with the motor output, that is your expressive part is a problem, we will call it as a non-fluent. When there is a problem with the receptive part or sensory part, we will call it as an Wernicke's aphasia, posterior aphasia, or this is an receptive aphasia. And in Broca, in the anterior part. I think regarding anterior part, most important is the inferior frontal gyrus. Inferior frontal gyrus on the left side and superior temporal gyrus on the posterior side is for your Wernicke's area. These two areas are connected by the arcuate fasciculus, arcuate fibers. So if there is a problem in the Wernicke's area, you can get defect mainly in the comprehension, and there will be a jargon speech, and patient will not understand anything, you will not understand anything, just like your optic neuropathy, optic neuritis. Similarly, in the anterior part, the problem mainly lies with the expression. It is a strangled speech, output is very less, and the patient tries to find with difficulties, the word finding difficulties, paraphasias, agrammatism, these will be there. So these are basically the 3 things. Now, if any problem lies with both anterior and posterior, you can get the global, which is very, very rare. They have got subcortical connections along with these things with the other cortical areas. Besides these things, we have got some other testing. So we test in the 6 form: spontaneous speech, fluent or non-fluent. Number 2, what is the problem with the naming? Is there any problem with the repetition? If there is a problem with the only repetition, then that is your conduction aphasia. And is there any problem with writing? Is there any problem with reading aloud? And is there any problem with comprehension? So these are 6 points one is to take. So he has covered the anatomical area. I think this part is all right. Professor Paul, please.
Yes, yes. Actually, when there is a language disorder, there is a three component. One is the emotional speech, one is the automatic speech, one is the propositional speech. Is usually propositional speech is mostly affected. Emotional speech means patient spontaneously there is the emotional speech that is hardly lost. Even in the Broca's aphasia, there is the automatic speech, the overlearned subject that also not. You see, in a comatose patient, even go on telling some songs and something, his name, go on something, Govinda, Govinda, is go on telling. There is the emotional speech. The speech, what we usually describe and what is lost, what is clinically important, that is the propositional speech. That is basically lost. So, Dr. Gupta, please proceed for the next part. Your dysarthria and what are the component, how the articulation happens, what is the physiology of articulation, and how in the bulbar and supravalvular and the pseudovalvular palsy your articulation is affected, and what are the types of dysarthria. You come
Yes.
to this point.
So when we are looking at the speech, when we are communicating with the patient, we must have an eye on the voice and the speech. The two things are different. I want to mention here. In the voice, we look for volume, pitch, and timbre. This reference is from De Jong, the recent edition. The dysphonia is classified under 2. One is high pitch, strain, and choking variety, which is due to adductor spasm of the vocal cord. And there is a hoarse whispering variety, which is due to vocal cord palsy or abductor spasm. We must remember that top reflex is abnormal in vocal cord palsy. Now, I am coming to the dysarthria proper. Dysarthria is classified into 2. It can be flaccid, it can be spastic, it can be ataxic, it can be hypokinetic, it can be hyperkinetic, or it can be mixed. So, to start I will again come on the anatomy in the latter part to force the matter how these speeches are produced. Now, the 6 types I am going on describing for the students. The first one is the irregular articulatory breakdown, excessive stress on some syllables, or there is inability to vary the stress according to the intonation, that is equal stress on syllables. This is classic ataxic dysarthria. I want to repeat again: irregular articulatory breakdown, excessive and equal stress on different syllables. Now, the second variety is very important. That is the rapid, flat, monotonous, emotionless, monopitch, and monoloudness speech, which is due to hypokinetic disorders. Now, we must remember in my first interaction, I told that the prosody of the language is controlled by the left basal ganglia predominantly, but in case of Parkinsonian disorders, we know that there is often bilateral involvement. So hypokinetic speech, that is how the prosody is affected. It is a flat, monotonous, emotionless, monopitch, monoloudness speech. Now, the exact opposite thing happens in dystonia or chorea, where the language is prolonged, phoneme, variable rate, inappropriate silence, sudden stoppage of voices. So that is the hyperkinetic part of the dysarthria. Now I come to a very important part. What Sir was telling, what is element dysarthria and what is human dysarthria. Now the components of element dysarthria are: this can be breathy, this will be with nasal intonation, the consonants will be imprecise. So that is how it is a flaccid or element or bulbar, whatever you can want to say, dysarthria. But describing this, we must, again the reference is from Dijon. Expressing this, we must keep an eye on facial weakness, lingual weakness, and palatal weakness. How the facial weakness is tested? It is by the abnormal labial sound, like paw.
এই এত আওয়াজ আওয়াজ কে হচ্ছে? এই সবাই কৌশিক সবাইকে মিউট করো।
So labial sounds are due to facial weakness. The lingual sounds ta is from the classically we say the pataka. The ta is from the tongue weakness, and there is palatal weakness which is appreciated by ka. So the pataka, if it is said together, it can test at a time the facial weakness, the 7th nerve, the tongue weakness, the 12th nerve, and the palatal weakness, the 9th, 10th nerve at a time. And not only that, if we continue to say pataka, it opens avenue for the examination of a very rare disorder of speech, that is the apraxia of speech. Only by this test we can find the difficulty, the groping, that means the excessive facial movements while pronouncing, the inconsistent error, the different time the error will be on different letter, and the patient will attempt for self-correction. So these are the 4 features of apraxia of speech, which can be a lesion to the supplementary motor area. Now, the final part I want to come, that is the human dysarthria or the spastic dysarthria. Here, the voice will be harsh. There will be mashed potato like in the face. There will be slow rate. The consonants will be again imprecise. Now, how strained or how strangled it will be depends on the involvement of the brain unilaterally or bilaterally. Now, if the bilateral corticobulbar fibers are affected, which is coming down to the lower cranial nerves, then the strain will be more. So in pseudobulbar cases where there is bilateral affection of the corticobulbar fiber, say for example in the multi-infarct model in the internal capsule, then the voice will be more strained. But this voice will not be breathy. This voice will not have the nasal quality. But we also remember there are diseases where the spastic dysarthria may have a nasal component. This suggests that there is a simultaneous lower motor cranial nerve or lower motor cranial nerve nucleus is involved. The classical example is the amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Kaushik,
So what are the defects of the phonation?
Jyotirmoy, before that, I want to ask
Yes.
him one question. Can
Hmm.
you allow me?
Yes.
So, Kaushik,
Yes, sir.
what I like to tell you, probably you have described in a very nice way, and everything what you have described is correct, but the audience probably has not grasped what you have actually meant by apraxia of speech. Can you just repeat with a lucid word so that they will understand? You have mentioned about the apraxia of speech, is not it?
Yes, yes.
Can you repeat it?
So yes, sir. The apraxia of speech is predominant due to the lesion of the supplementary motor area. The problem is the patient, the way we differentiate it from dysarthria, yes, the patient has expression difficulty, but the 3 points are very, very important. One is groping. Groping is the patient is excessively moving the facial muscles to pronounce something, but he cannot. The second point is the errors are inconsistent. Like if we say pataka repeatedly, at times the error will be at pa, at times it will be at ta, at point, at the error will be at ka. But in dysarthria, usually these phonemic errors are consistent. And the fourth most important thing is the patient understands it, that he or she is making the mistake, and he go on for self-correction, which may or may not be successful, but this
You will try.
attempt to self-correction is not seen in the dysarthria.
So what is apraxia first? First you tell what is apraxia. Then you say this is the difference, and then it will be clear. What do you mean by apraxia?
Sir, apraxia is the highest order motor dysfunction which is due to the which is responsible for the planning and programming of a motor action when the lower
I think what you are telling absolutely right, because
The
these
lower
are written in certain books, but by definition, I tell you very simple word. I just tell you the simple word is that inability to perform a learned motor activity. Again, I am repeating, inability to perform a learned motor activity in absence of any sensory, motor, cognitive, or cerebellar dysfunction. This is the definition of apraxia. So inability to perform a learn which you actually knew earlier, but you are not in a position right now to perform that thing. So for that reason, you take the help of other facial accessory other muscles. So there is excessive type of your facial movements, and grouping is there, obviously. And you try to do it because you are understanding that you have to say something. You try to do it, and it is inconsistent. Inconsistent means the same type of phonation will not occur in a case of dysarthria. Dysarthria is the same particular area. But here, if you make a word, sometimes it will be in the first letter, then second time it will be in the second alphabet, sometimes it will be in the third alphabet. So in that way, if it goes on in supplementary motor area, sometimes is involved, you can get apraxia of speech. So this is the basic difference between dysarthria and apraxia. Thank you for lucid.
Thank you.
explanation.
Thank you, Subhadeep. Thank you. So lastly, we'll come to the question and answer on the speech area. Before that, I request Dr. Sandeep Ghosh, please describe the management of mitral stenosis and the guideline of giving the anticoagulation in such a patient.
Sir, with your
Dr.
due permission, I want to mention one thing.
Yes, please.
If you receive the patient within 4.5 hours and it is a medium vessel occlusion, please go for thrombolysis. And if it is a large vessel occlusion, please go for mechanical thrombectomy. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Very good message. Very good message.
Very good message. Very good message. Dr. Sandeep, You please present the management of mitral stenosis in such a cases. কোথায় সন্দীপ কোথায় গেল?
স্যার আছি।
দেখাও।
হ্যাঁ।
এটা কি এ করবে?
এটাকে স্যার
শেয়ারটাকে সরাতে হবে তো।
হ্যাঁ, আমারটা দেখছি।
এই তো সন্দীপ।
স্যার আমার স্ক্রিনটা বোধহয় শেয়ার হয়নি। হয়েছে কি হয়নি? হয়নি।
স্যার কৌশিক সামন্ত হয়ে গেছিল তো, আমি স্ক্রিনটা বন্ধ করলাম ওনার।
হ্যাঁ আমি করছি, দেখছি। এবার এসছে কি?
হ্যাঁ আসছে, এসে গেছে।
এসে গেছে তো? হ্যাঁ আচ্ছা,
Full screen
আমি এগুলো কিছু বলবো না, ম্যানেজমেন্ট পার্টে ডাইরেক্টলি চলে যাচ্ছি। এটা হচ্ছে আমি জাস্ট
talk in English. Many
Okay,
people
sir.
do
Yes,
not
sir.
understand.
Yes, sir. I'll not be emphasizing on the clinical features and other parts. I'll be just giving you the videos here.
Just
later on
management.
for I'll be management. So regarding the medical therapy, sorry. This thing is not going off.
And just click on the screen.
Okay.
Just click on the screen. Yeah, there you click. It will go away. Yeah.
It's not going away, sir. Okay, sir. Let it be this way. So there are three components. First is recommendations of medical therapy. So in mitral stenosis, the recommendations is first is in patients with rheumatic MS and having AF or a prior embolic event or a LA thrombus, and anticoagulation with a vitamin K antagonist is indicated. So in here, if as this patient here we are dealing is having a atrial fibrillation, so this patient was initially rightly put on an oral anticoagulant prior to this episode. The next thing is that if this patient is having a increased heart rate, so these patients should be put on a drug that will control the heart rate. And the third point is that in patients with normal sinus rhythm and with symptomatic at rest on exertion or sinus tachycardia, then the heart rate control will be beneficial. So summarizing these three aspects is that the patients for rate control, he should be put on beta blockers or non-DHP CCBs. If the patient is having just a borderline low blood pressure and in sinus rhythm, he can be put on ivabradine. And when non-DHP calcium channel blockers cannot be used or ineffective, or where beta blockers cannot be used, we can go for amiodarone for a rate control. Digoxin is sometimes used in patients, especially in AF with heart failure. This will be heart failure. And the next is the anticoagulants, that is vitamin K antagonists. The patients should be on salt restriction. She should be on diuretics, especially the loop diuretics. And the patient should be on rheumatic fever prophylaxis. I'll be discussing the specifications later on, and management of infections. And if the patient is having any, for sending for blood cultures, correction of anemia, and management of complications, that is in this patient, the embolic stroke. So this is actually, I'll not show you the videos here. This is a spontaneous echo contrast, and this is actually LA thrombus. Somehow this thing is not going off. That's the problem. Things are not going off. Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Sandeep, you can on-share and reshare.
This one.
Whole thing you can on-share. Yeah. Now it's fine.
Yeah. So this is a transesophageal echo, and here you can see the smoke here, smoky appearances. This is actually the spontaneous echo contrast. And here, this is the LA appendage, and we can see in the pointer here, you can see something is fluttering here. And this is actually a thrombus in the left atrial appendage, and this can embolize any moment. And so regarding the vitamin K use of the anticoagulants on patients with valvular heart disease and AF. So in case of my rheumatic fever with MS, the management should always be a vitamin K antagonist with anticoagulation, and NOACs are not used in this case. Regarding the infective endocarditis prophylaxis, so this I am going with the latest ESC guidelines, and here actually they have not mentioned anything regarding the use of prophylaxis in patients with MS. So the only indications they have given is with prosthetic cardiac valve, including transcatheter implanted prosthesis, the prosthetic material used for cardiac valve repair, such as annuloplasty rings, if they are used. Previous infective endocarditis episodes are there. Unrepaired cyanotic congenital heart diseases or repaired congenital heart disease with residual shunts or valvular regurgitations at the site of or adjacent to the sites of prosthetic patch, cardiac transplant patient with valvular regurgitations. And there is no benefit in valvular heart disease where at high risk of infective endocarditis, antibiotic prophylaxis is not recommended for non-dental procedures. So this is going by the latest recommendations by the ESC 2020. Coming to the secondary prevention, again, the secondary prevention, the drugs that are used are the benzathine penicillin, the penicillin V potassium, the sulfadiazine, and macrolides. And this is mostly practiced like the azithromycins, usually given in weekly doses, 500 milligram weekly. So duration of prophylaxis is, in this case, the rheumatic fever with carditis and residual heart disease is there. There is persistent VHT. That duration should be 10 years or until the patient is 40 years of age. And lifetime prophylaxis may be recommended in patients if it is of high risk of group A streptococcal exposure. And coming to the indications for surgery. So the two modalities, one is the balloon mitral commissurotomy and the mitral valve surgery. So commissurotomy is recommended for symptomatic patients with severe MS with a favorable valve morphology as calculated by the Wilkins score. Coming to the if the mitral valve surgery is indicated for severe symptomatic patients with severe MS who are not at high risk for surgery and who are not candidates or have failed percutaneous mitral commissurotomy, we can go for mitral valve surgeries. The other class 1 indication is that concomitant mitral valve surgery is indicated for patients who are undergoing surgery for other causes. So these are the 3 class 1 indications. What happened? Okay, I'm not going to these other recommendations. So this is actually the Wilkins score. There are 4 headings on which they are tested. One is the mobility, the thickening of the mitral valves, the caudal involvement, and the presence of calcifications of the leaflets. So score less than 8 favors the BMV, or which we commonly call PMV, that is percutaneous transmitral commissurotomy. And this is in a nutshell the recent guidelines regarding the indications for surgery. So symptomatic stage D with the pliable valve and no clot and less than grade 2 MR, we can go for percutaneous mitral valve commissurotomy. And if the patient is symptomatic with a NYHA class 3 or 4 and he's a surgical candidate, then you can go for the mitral valve surgeries. The others indications we can see here are sometimes if the patient is having a raised pulmonary arterial pressure, if the patient is having a new onset AF, or if there is exertional symptoms and the stress test shows significant hemodynamically significant MS with an increase in the gradient, in those cases, we can go for the surgery or the PTMC. So how is a BMV done? So this is done usually by the transvenous approach through the femoral vein. And this is the balloon. There are various balloons. Acura balloon is there, Inu balloon is there. So there is a puncture is done through the intraatrial septum. This is the RA, this is the LA. For a guide wire, the balloon is negotiated through the mitral valve, and then the balloon is inflated. There are 2 parts. One is the proximal part and the distal part. The distal balloon is inflated first, followed by the proximal balloon. This waist gets inflated, and ultimately what happens? The commissures break down, and there is a doubling of the mitral valve area, resulting in a reduction in the mean mitral valve gradient. So here is a video, not a video, this is actually a still picture. So this is the waist, and early in the inflation, there was a significant gradient. The blue arrow actually denotes the left atrial tracing, and this one, the red one, is the LV tracing. And see, we can see a significant gradient here that decreased after the full expansion of the balloon. These are interesting pictures which I have shown. Okay, I will not be going through this. These are differential. So this one I was discussing, and I will just show you here. This is actually a ball valve thrombus within the LA, and this is one of the mimickers of the MS that we have discussed here. This is a LA myxoma here that is prolapsing from the LA into the LV. This is post radiation. So how frequently will we monitor these patients? So in case of MS, with a progressive MS, that is valve area of more than 1.5 cm square every 3 to 5 years. If there is a severe asymptomatic patients, then every 1 to 2 years. And if the mitral valve area is less than 1 cm, then every year. So the next is that regarding the anticoagulation, I've already discussed. These patients should always be put on vitamin K antagonists with high time in the therapeutic range. There is a therapeutic range. The patient should be in the therapeutic range for a significant amount of time. So this is one slide. This is from 2016 AF guidelines. So when we stroke scale. So Kaushik, can you please tell me the NIHS stroke scale of this particular patient? Kaushik?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. NIHS case for 4.
4, right. So this is a case of mild stroke. In case of TIA, the patient should be started on the OAC 1 day of the acute event. Less than 8 is 3 days after the acute event. So in this patient, it is the patient should be put on OACs again after 3 days. For moderate stroke, we have to evaluate for the hemorrhagic transformation by CT or MR at 6 days. And then if there is no such lesion, then at 6 days, we can start off with the therapy, with the anticoagulation. And for severe stroke, then we have to restart the therapy after 12 days of the acute event. So this is as going with the 2016 AF guidelines. And this is just regarding the ICH. I'll not go into details here. So I thank you. I'll finish my presentation here. And
regarding the slide of 13612, sir, I want to mention one thing.
Yeah.
The man who first proposed it, I met him in person, Professor Dinar, who did the Relay trial on dabigatran and later on the Aristotle trial on EPIC-7. He's a very funny man. I met him. He was the only neurologist in the panel of 45 cardiologists for dabigatran trial, and he first proposed this formula of 13612. Professor Dinar, he is from Germany. I met him. He's a small person, but very powerful, very innovative man, I should say.
Oh, Dr. Sandeep, you are in a beautiful environment.
Yes, sir. And
Virtual.
Yes, sir.
Now, Dr. Joyanto and Dijen, your comment, and then we'll close the
Yeah, very nice updating. I'll say that the presentation is very good, but Kaushik need to improve few aspects definitely. And more than the presentation and discussion, this updating on the aphasia and the management part. And I'm sure had we been with more time, Dr. Sandeep Ghosh would have taken us more through the ECG, echo, and the management plan. But still, it's a refreshing of our understanding of the subject. And I must tell that our students and the attendees must have benefited. So thank you, Dr. Sandeep, thank you, Dr. Shubhodip, and thank you, Dr. Kaushik. All presentation and
Dr. Dijen Das, Dr. Das, here's some suggestion for the students. Dijen is connected, not. I think Dijen Das not connected. Okay. So, Professor Imkirai, may we close?
So I have something to say.
Yes.
Today
yes,
is
yes.
Guru Purnima, and
Oh.
today I pay my reverence to all my gurus present here in this and those who are not present also on this auspicious occasion, auspicious day. Sir.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
yeah.
Same thing for us.
We our benevolent regards for all the teachers and the gurus from whom we have learned many things.